This is Antithesis, your underground academic radio where the focus is on you. For those that are in the thick of it today, we know what you are living through. And for those that chose or were forced onto a different path, we know what it costs. We're here to be your companion and to help you reorient your compass a bit, to help make sense of it all. Thanks for being here. The opinions expressed here are my own and do not reflect those of my employer or any entity professionally affiliated with me. Topics in these podcasts will be familiar to many, if not all, within the academic and scientific communities, within institutions, industries, and employers of all kinds. Some of these topics may be of a highly sensitive nature to certain listeners, particularly those that have experienced or are experiencing them, and could trigger some emotions that are upsetting or distressing. I've created this space to speak openly about these topics with the broader goal of helping individuals cope, adjust, and adapt constructively to the many challenges at hand. With that said, thank you for joining me. Antithesis, Episode 11, Interdisciplinary. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us with today's episode. Today, I'm kicking off sort of a two-part mini-series where the topics interlace. And the second part requires me to weave in some definition and perspective on a first broad concept, of which I want to introduce and discuss some today. Yet again, these matters boil down so often to words, names, labels, and so on. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's life. But like so many things when it comes to people and society and all our constructs, for a multitude of reasons, no doubt we find ourselves needing to apply categorizations and labels all the time. And when you take a moment to really think about it, in a way, humans end up having this common drive and desire and need to ascribe some type of membership to ourselves and with our peers. And on that token, we want to show some kind of value in this kinship, especially if it's something or even simply some type of perspective that is totally new and we want to amplify its worth. This can be relevant to people or working products and the approaches used or physical products being made and sold. Then we dig a bit deeper. And if you think about it further, these kinds of labels and categorizations can actually reflect the truth and reality about something, or it is nothing much more than a cover and ascribing some claim or feature or set of attributes that don't actually exist, in part or even in whole. But simply the idea of these things can make us all feel better by just hearing that term or expression, unless again, we really start to look at the fine print and the substance and the details of what is really inside. Of course, this isn't always black and white, and there can be some gray areas in between. Nevertheless, what and how we end up making and dealing with labels, for better and worse, is no small thing to our lives, personal and professional. And while I'm sure some of you are wondering, where is he going with this? Let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean, at least within the arena of actual products and their marketing. Thinking about the words green, eco-friendly, natural. And I think you get the gist of what I'm pointing out here. And even with a few cursory online searches, with the fact that the term eco-friendly really was intended to better indicate authentic environmental safety and advantages. It does not necessarily mean a certain product might be sustainable or necessarily perfectly safe or friendly to the environment, though the Federal Trade Commission has enacted laws against what some of you will recognize as greenwashing. And this is truly up to whomever is responsible for pitching a certain product and whether or not the public would accept or believe it, or if they would even care. And where the lines are drawn by the offerer and how they can be bent is all about making something fit, whether it is 100% truthful, partially inaccurate, or just flat out dishonest. So, with that little primer to whet the appetite and hopefully bring at least some or add further familiarity into the realm of labels today, I want to talk about a word that has also been a label for decades now when it comes to science, technology, and engineering, and more. And that word is interdisciplinary. Now, this term interdisciplinary truly does hold some merit in the sense that it represents the application of two or more disciplines into some type of coordinated effort to achieve some outcome. And this can, without question, be powerful when it comes to research endeavors. But when it comes to these terminologies, how much of a good thing can there be, especially with their usage, when it starts to overreach and, for lack of a better phrase, just saturate everything to the point where it even might start to lose its meaning? And even then, it raises the question, weren't we doing things like this all along, to one degree or another, and now we have a special name for it? For that last point, just hold on to that thought. With an interest for this episode and the discussion, I felt it important to find some kind of source that discusses the origins of the term interdisciplinary or interdisciplinarity, its use, and even different definitions and applications of this word as other related words. And it was an interesting exercise because I had neither the time nor effort that I wanted to spend doing an entire research project on this. I searched a bit of the literature and found a review paper that fit the bill. Now, non academics listening here, review articles can be so immensely helpful to researchers and scientists because they can often do a very nice job of summarizing a research topic or area, specific or broad, and its current status from progress made, as well as providing potentially helpful overviews of the history of that topic. Of course, highly focused topics, especially those that are very new, might not require a crazy long review article, whereas others that are broad and what we might call historical, because they go so far back in time, might take books to cover, or even multiple books. Anyway, I found a review article online in Clinical and Investigative Medicine Journal, and don't worry so much about that, the fact that that's the journal, but anyway, that was published in 2006 by Bernard Choi and Anita Pak. They were the authors. And I've put the reference as well as a shortened web link that I found to download the actual article PDF itself, which is good since it's not available for free from the publisher. So for those of you interested, you can actually click that link and read the paper I'm talking about. And the couple of things that I was curious was to try to identify the initial use of the terminology interdisciplinary. And it turns out that the article also presents the history and usage of the words multidisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity as well. The authors used old dictionaries and the internet to try to sleuth out these types of questions and get more information about the origination of these terms and how they're being used. It turns out the conception of the word interdisciplinary and interdisciplinarity started in the mid-1970s, so it has been around for decades. Anyway, here is the language from the article that I wanted to share with you. And I want listeners to keep in mind that this was written in the realm of health research and services, so terms concerning those fields are sort of mentioned, but this applies to everyone. Okay, let's break a few down. Interdisciplinarity analyzes, synthesizes, and harmonizes links between disciplines into a coordinated and coherent whole. Multidisciplinarity draws on knowledge from different disciplines, but stays within their boundaries. So I guess the idea is when you're multidisciplinary, it is each specific discipline provides their contribution, but they're not merged into one. They all work together to provide a product, whereas interdisciplinarity and things that are interdisciplinary will all kind of merge in together into one effort. Then there's transdisciplinarity. Transdisciplinarity integrates the natural, social, and health sciences in a humanities context and transcends their traditional boundaries. Now, once again, they mentioned natural, social, health sciences. It can be a lot of sciences, but the idea is, they're reaching outside of the boundaries they are traditionally seen and used to go even farther. That's really the point of the term transdisciplinarity. Now, why do I feel this is important to break these terms down for you? These terms have become pervasive. Now, why do I feel it is important to break these terms down for you? These terms have become pervasive, especially interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity, and I want to use them as a bit of a case study concerning labels. What's interesting about this article is one of the points of background that the authors themselves state as a purpose for writing it, and here it is. The terms interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity are increasingly used in the literature, but are ambiguously defined and interchangeably used. Just reading the sentence from 2006 really does imply a bit of a theme that applies here in 2024, and it will continue. These wonderful terminologies are being used, and I'm sure very often with the best of intentions, but also often where it feels like we need to throw some fancy spaghetti on the wall to make sure folks look at what we're doing as novel, impactful, maybe even fancy. We're a big part of that special group. And with all of that said, I have some broader thoughts I want to share about the usage of terminology such as this and what it can mean for scientists, but particularly how young trainees should reflect on their use. But also if scientists at any level start feeling boxed out in one way or another because of their emphasis of study and any feeling like it might mean they don't belong. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up here in this episode is because along with the torrent of people jumping on bandwagons to suddenly claim some type of territory within a space that was somehow defined by one or a handful of folks in whatever niche you're talking about, professional, personal, people can start feeling left behind, even alienated. And then comes disorientation in one form or another because some individuals might feel left out. It's like they're missing out on the action and that they need to redirect themselves or make some other potentially drastic choices because all of a sudden they aren't a part of some kind of special group. I also existed and operated in the interdisciplinary academic world, but it sure didn't start out this way for me. I moved from getting an undergraduate degree in biochemistry, followed by a PhD in molecular and cellular biology in plant systems. Then, as I touched on in earlier episodes, for my postdoctoral research, I transitioned to studying animal cellular and molecular systems, to understand how biological switches work. And at that point, had begun to learn and understand how you could use some mathematics, a la computational tools, to better understand what biological systems could do and what they couldn't do, and begin to gain some insights into how they may operate. Now, again, to help you do some predictive work and some confirmational work, but it's not like it made you psychic, as we also described in past episodes. But only then did it seem like I'd crossed the threshold and wow, this is interdisciplinary work. I belong. But I still found it a bit perplexing. And it wasn't that I didn't think it was really interesting and even cool, because it was. I mean, wow, I'm a part of this interdisciplinary group. But around that time, all of a sudden, so many institutions were touting, BioX, our BioX efforts, or the phrase systems biology, and the like. I mean, it seemed as if, oh, we had better throw down the gauntlet and be the first in this area so we can tout that we're the best of the best, and so on. And I remember having a conversation with a very reputable individual in my research area, and they said these words to me: look, physiologists were the original systems biologists, which is the dead stare. And that statement hit me, and it really stuck with me. This was a full professor at a university in the Bay Area, and I mean, he was just dead serious. Again, I have no qualms or disagreement with how incredible advancements can be when you assemble efforts from differing and disparate niches to make bold new discoveries. But the comment I just mentioned about physiology, to what end can and should we allow ourselves to repackage something to give it all the glitz and glam possible? I mean, I'll say it right here. Institutions will, of course, do whatever it takes to bring in the bucks and the best possible recruits they can to grasp at or keep whatever edge they possibly can. And that's okay. It's understandable that you repackage and you have to resell. But what about you? What about you, young scientist, young trainee, maybe even young faculty, maybe even slightly older faculty here? I mean, you see this explosion of activity on something that's been around and evolving, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly. And all of a sudden, boom, you can't spend money fast enough. You can't make promises fast enough. And yet again, AI, anyone? Speaking of trends, of course, this isn't all hype. There's always a bit of something there. But ask yourself, how much was already there and where are we really going before we started calling it this thing? Like, this work had existed, now we're calling it interdisciplinary. Well, that's just great. But again, it isn't all hype. I'd ask of you, can you be still for a moment and reflect on whether it is science, technology, engineering, medicine, and so on, and think to yourself, I'm not going to let myself panic about this. Because without a doubt, other than those crafting and blasting out concepts and messaging about some kind of new label, for some of us, maybe even most of us, it can feel a bit dizzying and even disconcerting, and also can become admittedly annoying, as it can feel like the theme is regurgitated over and over, and it's all you see. And one more time, AI, anyone? So, I guess a viewpoint that I want to share here is that the first steps to sort out and understand any proposed magic is to take steps to demystify. And I will reiterate here, forcefully, this is not to cause offense to anyone that is diehard subscribed to multi, and or transdisciplinary research, or even artificial intelligence, or systems biology. That was and is my world. But I can't emphasize enough how every single person involved in any avenue of science likely has already crossed boundaries and will continue to do so. Even from my perspective, just because you can use a tool to study the rates and outcomes of some biochemical reactions and identify something new about the system with which you're doing experiments doesn't mean it's infinitely different from what others used in the past. And the fact of the matter was, there were many researchers doing mathematical biology for decades in my field. And then we were the ones also adding some experimentation in parallel to it. I mean, how did the historical full-time mathematical biologist working for decades feel at the inception of the systems biology era? I can say as a matter of fact, I witnessed firsthand experimentalists mock biologists that were purely mathematical and computational. And you know what these experimentalists ended up doing to make sure their future papers were published in the top tier journals? They ended up having no choice but to eventually collaborate with these mathematicians and modelers, because this is where the world had shifted and it started becoming an expectation. Even to get great papers published, well, have you done some modeling of your system to demonstrate that mathematically this agrees with what you're observing experimentally? Now, I have to emphasize, because you see a certain terminology applicable or not so much, and a trend starting to form, It does not necessarily mean you need to change your entire existence and approach, but thinking strategically and tactically, you had better know less and pay attention and ascertain what these changes could mean for you in the short and long term. If you want to get swept up in all of it, then go for it. But I'm of the attitude that cooler, analytic heads prevail, and I'd advise simply being thoughtful before panic and rash decisions set in. I think it can be very easy to get confused about what labels can apply and when. And I would advise anyone that feels caught up in that limbo to take a step back and take some time to find that fit. Here I'm using the word fit. How about this? To find your flexibility that gives you a bit of leeway and helps you see how you are right there in that realm, folks, that we're talking about. We all want to feel, again, like we have some kind of shared identity and can also be a part of the club, though aiming to do this can also come with its own dangers. I remember being at my postdoc institution, I'd given a presentation, and there was a senior faculty member from the biochemistry department, that was a different department that I was in, came up after my talk. They walked up to me and go, "That presentation was fantastic." I was like, "Wow, thank you so much." And then they said to me, "Don't ever call yourself a biochemist again." And that is just one of the memories from my past where I'm like, wow. Okay. So, one more time, even just the word biochemistry, I was deemed for what I was presenting. I had better not call myself a biochemist. That it was just one more aspect of labels and a very early exposure to how sensitive people within their own domain, and especially if someone else applies that word to the domain they're working in, whether it's accurate or inaccurate. And I felt pretty confident saying the word biochemistry. Clearly, I was informed not to. That was just a wild experience and maybe a good anecdote for all of you to reflect on. You never know who might get triggered because you say you're doing something and they disagree. So one more time, how the labels apply or don't. For all of you non-academics tuning in here and hopefully still listening after these reflections, maybe for you to get an idea, if you didn't have it already, that even in the academic world, people who get so worried about who they are and what group they're in, and so much about the institution and the systems that drive this, I think we lose so much of the forest from the trees because of the structuring and labeling. So I want all of the non-academics to know, and any academics, past or present, to heed attention to this. So much of what you might think sets us apart only makes us that much more similar. So much of our world outside academia is interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, right down to the farmer, the electrician, the plumber, the builder, the housekeeper, the parent. I can go on and on. Sure, these aren't usually involved in direct matters of research and development, but in their own way, they are discovery and operations from the day to day for you folks out there just working to get it done. And I think it's important that everybody works to foster this understanding for each other within and between worlds. And every individual, no matter what you do or where you roam, have some courtesy, some kindness, some openness to anyone that is working to find their place and to participate. There's no need to feel like you're that special, no matter how special everyone tells or treats you. We are a world of disciplines that we all need to fit and work together to make progress for ourselves and for each other. And to remember and employ this philosophy takes its own discipline. So everyone, do the best you can to practice it. For those that feel like they're on the outside looking in, have the courage to stand tall while evolving to learn about these new things if they feel relevant, and maybe even finding ways to apply them. For everyone else riding the wave of a new trend in disciplinary, we'll say meshing, find the ways you can support others that want to join and pay attention to them too. You might learn something new yourself. We're all so much better off thinking, solving, and working together than trying to do it apart. And with that, thanks so much for joining me today. And I hope you'll look forward to our next episode that will be released in a week's time. And no matter on which platform you heard today's episode, if you enjoyed it, want to hear more, please subscribe, follow, like, and share. And set your notifications to let you know that next fresh episode is ready for you to dig in. All of you, keep building up your courage, hang in there, and keep your head up. We'll talk to you again soon. Continuing 30 years of experience with stories in and beyond the academic realm, Antithesis is a podcast that will take these perspectives and philosophies and pull them, along with you, the student, the researcher, the innovator, the educator, into the sunlight. Join us for some firsthand experiences, insights from inside and outside academia, and perspectives that are aimed at redefining the conventions of academia and your training. with the aim of helping you reorient your compass and strengthen you on your journey forward, or to recover and grow from those times past. We'd love to have you follow us and tune in weekly. If you have a topic you'd like discussed or a challenge you are facing you want to share, email us at allsystemsgo@gmail.com. That is ALLSYST3MSGO@gmail.com.